Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and watching Al24 News live from Algiers. Coming up next now, World News Program. According to Ukraine's emergency service, more than one person died and 3 injured after downed missile scraps hit a residential building in the Ukrainian capital, Kiev. Russian President Vladimir Putin called his military operation in Ukraine a success, saying Moscow would not let the country become a beachhead for aggressive actions against Russia. And finally, White House spokeswoman Jen Psaki says US President Joe Biden spoke from his heart when he called his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin a war criminal and described Putin's actions barbaric and brutal. Welcome again, and we start with the latest regarding the Ukrainian-Russian file. Talks between Russian and Ukrainian continue via video link. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova said on Thursday. According to Zakharova, the parties are discussing military, political and humanitarian issues. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison said China would face consequences if it backs Russia's attack on Ukraine, arguing such a move would be an abomination, while hinting at new international sanctions for Beijing. Russia's armed forces hit a military depot in Rivne region in western Ukraine on Wednesday, Russian news agency reported on Thursday. The governor of Ukraine's Chernihiv region, Vyacheslav Chos, says that the region suffers great losses. According to him, the morgue in the region received 53 additional dead, and Ukraine hopes to evacuate civilians through 9 humanitarian corridors on Thursday from cities including the encircled port city of Mariupol, Deputy Prime Minister Iryna Vereshchuk said. According to Ukraine's emergency service, more than one person died and 3 injured after downed missile scraps hit a residential building in the Ukrainian capital, Kiev. The statement has also said that the building was struck at 5:09 a.m. local time, adding that 30 people have been evacuated so far and fire has been put out. Satellite images showed that Mariupol, a drama theatre in Ukraine before it was badly damaged in a bombardment. The building, which served as a shelter for hundreds of Ukrainian civilians, displayed the word children in large white letters in Russian on the sidewalk in front and behind the theatre. The town hall wrote in a statement posted on Telegram, messaging that Russia deliberately destroyed the drama theatre where hundreds of people are housed. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Wednesday called his military operation in Ukraine a success, saying Moscow would not let the country become a beachhead for aggressive actions against Russia. Let's have a listen.
The operation is developing successfully in strict compliance with the pre-approved plans. We had no choice but self-defense for the security of Russia. Apart from carrying out the special military operation, all the set goals will certainly be achieved. We will reliably ensure the security of Russia and our people, and we will not allow Ukraine to serve as a springboard for aggressive actions against Russia.
White House spokeswoman Jen Psaki says US President Joe Biden spoke from his heart when he called his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin a war criminal and described Putin's actions as barbaric and brutal. Hussein Berkani reports.
US President Joe Biden calls his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin a war criminal, answering a reporter's question after an event at the White House.
I think he is a war criminal.
Will you be meeting with him?
Jen Psaki, White House spokeswoman, stated that Biden was speaking from heart when he called Putin war criminal.
The president's remarks speak for themselves. He was speaking from his heart and speaking from what he's seen on television, which is barbaric actions by a brutal dictator through his invasion of a foreign country. There is a legal process that continues to be underway at the State Department. That's a process that they would have any updates on.
The Kremlin, however, responded saying that this rhetoric is unacceptable and unforgivable.
We believe such a rhetoric to be unacceptable and unforgivable on the part of the head of a state whose bombs have killed hundreds of thousands of people around the world.
No American official had so far publicly used the terms war criminal or war crimes, unlike other states or international organizations. The head of the European diplomacy, Joseph Borrell, for example, last week described as heinous war crime the Russian bombardment of establishment housing, a maternity hospital and a pediatric hospital in Mariupol.
On the other hand, Russian President Vladimir Putin believes that the avalanche of Western sanctions and condemnations hitting Russia, its economy, its sportsmen, and its world of culture is comparable to anti-Semitic persecutions. Let's have a listen.
In trying to nullify Russia, the West dropped its mask of civility and began to act belligerently, demonstrating its true nature. There are obvious parallels with the anti-Semitic Nazi programs carried out in Germany in the 1930s of the last century.
And in an address to the US and its allies, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky emphasized the end of the war in the negotiations. Let's listen.
Russian troops suffer such losses in Ukraine, which are not comparable to Syria or Chechnya or Soviet troops in Afghanistan. If the war against the Ukrainian people continues, the mothers of Russia will lose more children than in the wars in Afghanistan and Chechnya combined. Negotiations are underway, negotiations for the good of Ukraine. My priorities in the negotiations are absolutely clear. The end of the war, security guarantees, sovereignty, the restoration of territorial integrity.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky renewed his call for a no-fly zone over Ukraine in his virtual address to the United States Congress on Wednesday, but offered alternatives in case this request could not be fulfilled. Usama Ayedi reports.
Speaking before a full U.S. Congress, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky urges the United States to urgently impose a no-fly zone over Ukraine. In a video address broadcast to the U.S. Congress, the Ukrainian president implored the United States and its Western allies to do more to save his country from the Russian military operation, reminding them of the darkest hours of its history.
Is it too much to ask to create a no-fly zone over Ukraine to save people? Is it too much to ask a humanitarian no-fly zone to put in place conditions that would prevent Russia to terrorize our civilian towns on a daily basis? I have a dream. These words are known to each of you. Today I can say it. I have a need, the need to protect our sky. I need your decision, your aid, which means exactly the same what you feel when you hear the word I have a dream.
Zelensky told American elected officials about their great history and stated that they have pages that allow them to understand Ukrainians.
In your great history, you have pages that allow you to understand the Ukrainians when we need it most. Remember Pearl Harbor, that terrible morning of December 7, 1941, when your sky was darkened by the planes that were attacking you. Remember that.
President Joe Biden on Wednesday announced that the U.S. government will send $800 million in weapons to Ukraine, bringing the total over the past year to $2 billion. But pressure is growing on Capitol Hill to do even more. According to Biden and senior U.S. officials, the new package will include 800 shoulder-fired Stinger anti-aircraft weapons, and the president said his administration is working with Ukraine to obtain an unspecified type of longer-range anti-aircraft systems.
It includes 800 anti-aircraft systems to make sure the Ukrainian military can continue to stop the planes and helicopters that have been attacking their people and to defend their Ukrainian airspace.
The package also includes 9,000 shoulder-fired anti-armor weapons, including javelins, nearly 7,000 small arms, from machine guns to grenade launchers, 20 million rounds of ammunition, and 100 drones, including what Biden called our most cutting-edge ones. Also about to be sent more body armor and helmets.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky virtually addressed the German parliament and urged for a halt to destroy the new wall Russia was erecting in Europe. Ahead of his address, German MPs gave Zelensky a standing ovation.
While I'm addressing you, Russia is shelling our cities, ruining and destroying everything we have. Wonderful building, hospitals, schools using missiles, bombs. Over the last 3 weeks, there has been a huge loss of human lives. We are talking about thousands of lives. Children are being killed here in the middle of Europe in the 21st century. I'm addressing you following a number of negotiations, meetings, and requests for support that some of which have been too late following the sanctions, which not seem to be sufficient to bring a war to an end.
Although no soldiers or air assets would be deployed in Ukraine, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg stated that a major increase of NATO's military force in partner nations on its eastern side is being planned. More details in this report by Sofian Kentori.
NATO won't deploy any troops on air assets in Ukraine, but Jens Stoltenberg emphasized that there is preparation of extensive reinforcement of its military presence in the allied countries on its eastern side. The deployment of Patriot anti-missile systems by the United States in Poland and by Germany in the Netherlands.
Of course, we support peace efforts. We call on Russia and President Putin to withdraw its forces, but we have no plans of deploying NATO troops on the ground in Ukraine.
Secretary General also mentioned that Russian troops failed in taking control over Kiev within days, and he made clear that they should not underestimate Russia's capabilities when it comes to continue the war.
We realize that this quick victory, this blitzkrieg, taking control over Kiev within days, has absolutely failed. But we should not underestimate Russia's capabilities when it comes to continue the war.
President Joe Biden sent Wednesday additional security assistance to Ukraine of $800 million to help the country to keep resisting to the Russian military operation. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg met with the U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin in addition to talk about the alliance and to discuss Russia's military operation in Ukraine.
I think our presence here sends a signal to the world that we remain united in our support of Ukraine, and we condemn Russia's unprovoked and unjustified invasion.
NATO Secretary General announced on his Twitter an invitation summit to the leaders of the alliance countries on 24th of March in Brussels, where he will hold a meeting with government states leaders of the UE with attendance of President Joe Biden to discuss more about the situation in Ukraine and the world now and later.
Now, the UN's highest court, the International Court of Justice, ruled Wednesday on an urgent request by Ukraine for Russia to halt its military operation. The 13-2 verdict called for the Russian Federation to immediately suspend the military operations that it commenced on February the 24th. Only Russian and Chinese judges dissented. According to reports, the ruling is the first such verdict handed by international court since the military operation started in Ukraine.
Today here in Peace Palace is a very important moment and a complete victory of justice and a complete victory of Ukraine, now in the form of the order of the International Court of Justice concerning the imposition of provisional measures.
The Russian Federation shall ensure that any military or irregular armed units which may be directed or supported by it, as well as any organizations and persons which may be subject to its control or direction, take no steps in furtherance of the military operations referred to.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russian invaders will be held accountable for all war crimes against Ukrainians 3 weeks into an invasion that is attracting ever-growing Western support for Ukraine, and as the International Court of Justice must render its verdict in a procedure launched by Kiev, which asks the highest court of the UN to order Moscow to immediately stop its invasion.
The launch of the International Criminal Court's investigative group in Ukraine is also important, and together with our law enforcement agencies, it is already collecting all the evidence, collecting the facts of war crimes from the invaders on the territory of our state. I spoke with Karim Khan, the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court in The Hague. He is already in Ukraine. He has already started working. Therefore, the invaders will be responsible for all war crimes against Ukrainians. We Ukrainians can win and find peace, this peace that we all seek so much.
Russia's operation in Ukraine have been relentless, and the crisis has forced more than 3 million people to flee the country in search of safety, according to UN data. Both the UN's Refugee Agency and the International Organization for Migration estimate that the number of civilians fleeing could eventually reach 4 or 5 million. Traveling to the United Arab Emirates, Boris Johnson says the West has been blackmailed by Russia, which has created a dependency on its oil and gas. The British Prime Minister plans to lobby Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman for an increase in oil production as the crisis between Russia and Ukraine has sent markets plunging.
And we've got to make sure that we're prepared and that we're taking steps to mitigate that, to help people with the cost of living. So next week we're going to be setting out the energy strategy for the UK. Massive jump forward on renewables, more nuclear, using our own hydrocarbons more effectively. Also looking at what we can do to source hydrocarbons from places other than Russia. We've got to get off Russian hydrocarbons. But the reason for coming here is that it's not just that they've got oil, they're also some of the biggest investors here in the Gulf in UK renewables, in our wind farms, and that's what we'll be talking about.
And now two British Iranians, Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe and Anousheh Ashuri, landed in the Royal Air Force Base in Brize Norton, southwest of England, after they have been detained in Iran for years. Islam Sida reports.
After several years of hell in Iran, two British Iranians sentenced to prison for charges they have always denied landed in the United Kingdom on Thursday after their release the day before.
First of all, it's fantastic to see Anousheh and Nazanin come off the plane safely back in Britain for the first time in years, and that is truly fantastic for everybody, and I think everybody across the country understands that. I've met the families, they're safe and well. People are in very, very good spirits. I think it's been a really difficult.
Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe was arrested in April 2016 after visiting her family with her 22-month-old daughter and accused of plotting to overthrow the Islamic Republic. She was initially sentenced to 5 years in prison. Anousheh Ashuri, a retired engineer, was arrested in August 2017 while visiting his mother and sentenced to 10 years in prison for spying for Zionist entity. The two British Iranians have been released as the major powers gather in Vienna, prepared to renew the joint comprehensive plan of action on the Iranian nuclear program. In parallel with the liberation of Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe and Anousheh Ashuri, London also announced that it had settled an old debt with Tehran of £394 million without establishing a link between the two cases.
Former President Juan Orlando Hernandez should be extradited to the United States to face drug trafficking and weapons charges, a Honduran judge ruled out Wednesday. The country's Supreme Court of Justice said late Wednesday via Twitter that the judge has decided to grant the U.S. extradition request. U.S. prosecutors in the Southern District of New York have accused Hernandez in recent years of funding his political rise with profits from drug traffickers in exchange for protecting their shipments. He has strongly denied any wrongdoing. After a strong earthquake hit northeastern Japan with a magnitude of 7.4, striking off the coast of the Fukushima region at a depth of 60 kilometers right before midnight on Wednesday. More than 4 people have died and 94 wounded. Footage after the quake showed buildings rattling violently at an arcade in Fukushima, according to the utility Tokyo Electric Power Company. About 2 million households lost power on Wednesday after the quake, including 700,000 in the capital. South Korea has reached 2 seemingly contradictory pandemic milestones. It recorded more than 600,000 new COVID-19 infections on Thursday, the most of anywhere in the world. At the same time, the country has one of the lowest virus death rates globally, while anywhere else an infection surge of this size would signal an out-of-control outbreak. On the eve of the 60th anniversary of Victory Day on March the 19th of every year, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs organized today, Thursday, a historic conference. It is an event that coincides with the anniversary of signing a ceasefire agreement between Algeria and France in 1962. The advisor at the Algerian presidency, Abdelmajid Sheikhi, said that it enabled the restoration of sovereignty with all of its components with the unity of the Algerian people and territory. It achieved all the goals set by the first statement of November 54. And now it's time for more world news in this report by Zahra Farjani.
On the main avenue of Tunis, volunteers set up stands to encourage the population to participate in the national online consultation presented by President Kais Saied as a key step in his plan to redress the country. This survey was launched on January 15 to collect proposals for a constitutional referendum scheduled for this summer, but the number of visitors to the dedicated electronic portal remains low.
It is the speech broadcast on television sets and elsewhere that has left citizens reluctant, because the citizen no longer has any confidence in the political class as a whole. Today, the majority of 400,000 participants belong to the over 30 age group.
Scuffles break out outside the Cambodian court after convictions were handed down to opposition figures and exiled opposition leader Sam Rainsy. Some of the defendants' wives and supporters were knocked to the ground when security guards attempted to confiscate a banner from them. Hong Kong authorities closed all public beaches in the city on Thursday after photos of maskless residents enjoying the sun and surf sparked outrage in the mainland China.
Shenzhen and the country operate differently from us. The laws of mainland China are different from those of Hong Kong. They can close the beaches whenever they want, but I think Hong Kong should be a free and a diverse society. They shouldn't ban things whenever they want.
The Zilal Wellness Resort, a newly built resort on the northern end of Qatar, which has yet to officially open, hopes to host a first-class team during the 2022 FIFA World Cup, thanks to its remote location 1 hour from downtown Doha, and its high-end facilities designed to provide wellness and fitness retreat for guests.
And finally, Jurgen Klopp warned his Liverpool stars that their momentum in the Premier League title race is a fragile flower following Wednesday's vital 2-0 win at Arsenal. Klopp's side closed the gap on leaders Manchester City to 1 point thanks to goals from Diego Jota and Roberto Firmino at the Emirates Stadium. Liverpool's 9th consecutive league victory puts the destiny of the title in their hands, as they would take the trophy if they win the remaining 9 games, including a crucial trip to City on April the 10th.
Of course gives momentum, but momentum is the most fragile flower on the planet. Somebody just walk past you and steps on it and done. And then you work again, I don't know how long, to get kind of a momentum back. So I'm not a big friend of momentum. It's just...
And now it's time to have a reminder of our main top stories. According to Ukraine's emergency service, more than 1 person died and 3 injured after downed missile scraps hit a residential building in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. Russian President Vladimir Putin called his military operation in Ukraine a success, saying Moscow would not let the country become a beachhead for aggressive actions against Russia. And White House spokeswoman Jen Psaki says U.S. President Joe Biden spoke from his heart when he called his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin a war criminal and described Putin's actions barbaric and brutal. That's all for me, Nadia Kasmi, and the rest of the team. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye for now.